Hey, thank you everyone for attending today's presentation. We appreciate you coming out on your Thursday morning. My name is Chris Lair and I'm with Solis Security, and today we are going to have a lively discussion around the topic of threat detection and threat response. The title of this presentation is Ahead of the Curve, Managing Threats Before Impact. And this presentation is going to have a lot of news about things that we have been working on behind the scenes at Solis. So if you're an existing client or just someone looking at Solis or anyone else, this presentation is going to be for all of you. So that's fantastic. Today we're joined by one of our fantastic partners that's been around in this, and that is Stellar Cyber. And so we are happy to have Steve Solis with us today, and he's going to be providing you a lot of information specifically around the Stellar platform, which is one of the key pieces of the work that we've been doing around with our Security Operations Center. And then join us from our side will be Shantae Perrin, and Shantae is one of our directors. She leads our Security Operations Center. So all of the people that are involved in monitoring and responding for our clients' networks, she oversees that practice, and she's been pivotal in getting all of this work that we've been doing up and running and working like it should. So again, thank you everybody for going, and we'll go to the next slide. Yeah, so just a little bit about Solis. If you're unaware of who we are, Solis was started 21 years ago. We did cybersecurity consulting for mainly community and regional banks around the country. And since then, we've done a number of different things. Our business has grown, and we focus on two things specifically: incident response and cybersecurity. So what that means is that we get a lot of cases that we work come to us every single day. There is no break from those. And we help people in different types of events, whether it could be something as simple as, I say simple, but something like a business email compromise or ransomware event or denial of service or whatever the case may be. A few years ago, we were acquired by a cybersecurity insurance carrier, and they do more than just cybersecurity, but that's what's relevant today, and CFC, and they are based in London. And with that, we've expanded our teams to the UK. So we have a team in the UK and we have a team in Australia now. So we have complete global coverage, both from an incident response side as well as from our cybersecurity side. So just a few statistics there on where and how we operate. We are a global company, so we get brought into a number of different situations. Primarily our work takes place here in North America. But right now, for example, we're working a case in cooperation with our Australian team that has to do with a company that both has operations here in the US and in Australia. So we're able to cover things in multiple different ways. So one of the things that we bring to the table, just from a high level, is we have made a large investment with threat intelligence. And what does that mean for you? What that means is we have an enormous amount of information that comes to our fingertips on a continuous basis that tells us what's going on. So we may see different types of attacks occur, let's say in Western Europe that haven't hit the US, and we can take that threat intelligence and apply it to our environments here to not only protect our clients, but also detect if any of that activity is going on. Additionally, a lot of our threat intelligence comes from kind of deeper and darker places, if you want to say that. So we get a lot of threat intelligence from places where a lot of what we call threat actors, what most people would probably term as hackers, we get a lot of information directly from the conversations they have with one another. So for example, we get information that says, hey, by the way, I have credentials for company XYZ located in New Hampshire, and I'm selling those credentials for, $1,500 US in Bitcoin. Is anyone interested in buying them? I can guarantee you access into that network with credentials. And so we can spot that stuff and kind of nip it in the bud before it happens. So, and we get our threat intelligence from different forms. It's all It's all legitimate threat intel from both private as well as governmental sources. And again, not to go too much into this, but we have the incident response side of the business and the managed side of the business. And then we also do a number of project-based. So if you need consultant work, like we used to do for the banks, we still do for banks, but if you need consultant work, which we call our virtual information security officer work, we can do that, as well as your typical kind of testing, penetration testing, application security testing. We help people build out their security policies. We help them do with vendor due diligence, and several things that we do to help people improve their cybersecurity posture. And if you're regulated, meet regulatory requirements and pass your audits. So today we're going to really kind of dig down into some technologies, but we're going to keep it high level because we're not expecting everybody here to be, super techie and wanting to get into the details. But I'm just going to go over a few acronyms that are going to be thrown out, and that get thrown out today, and try to make some sense out of them for you before we jump into this conversation. So first one is EDR, and there's some confusion about these terms. I know I was on a call the other day where someone was trying to get an insurance policy, and they were very concerned that they didn't have what's called the MDR on here, and the insurance policy was only calling for them to have EDR. So I was able to settle that confusion, but it happens every day. So what EDR is, quite simply, is what today's more advanced antivirus solutions are. They do much more than what your antivirus solution did 5-10 years ago, but they do a lot more. But if you just think about that, that is the actual product itself that gets installed on laptops, desktops, and servers. Okay. It can be installed by you internally. It can be installed by a third party, or whatever the case. MDR, if you want to think about that, is having somebody actually manage and monitor that software, that EDR solution. So some vendors have that as an additional service that they offer. So you can get a license of their software, and you can also add on them managing and monitoring. In other cases, like with Solis, we also do that service. We provide you the license of the EDR. We do not create our own software, and then we manage that for you, so you don't have to concern yourselves with that. So if you have IT people internal, or use a third party for IT, they can focus on the IT things while we can focus on the security. All of our people are certified, continually trained, highly experienced, and this is what they do. They just focus on this. We don't have them doing 1,000 different things during the day. The stuff that we're going to really be talking about mostly today is kind of what I would say is the next step, and that's XDR and MXDR, which is the managed portion. So think of XDR as you have this EDR that I've been talking about, and you have other things within your network. You have firewall, they have some web browser security, you have server logs, you have a number of different things. Those right now are sitting isolated on their own islands, right? They're not being kind of collected and universally analyzed and looking for issues that may be detected in one thing but may be occurring someplace else. So that's what XDR is all about. So think about XDR as the ability to not only collect all this data, but to have analytical capabilities and the ability and investigative capabilities in it to let us see if something we detect something here, is that only here, or are we seeing other indications, other parts of your network that we need to see? And I'm not going to steal any of Steve's thunder, so Steve's going to go into a little bit more about how Stellar solves this problem. But what we at Solis are doing is we now have, with being powered by Stellar Cyber, we have the ability to provide this XDR capability as well as manage that for you. So that means that we're making sure things are operating correctly, we're detecting things, we're responding to things, we're letting you know what's going on, all those types of things are what we're doing. So the bulk of this conversation today is going to be around this managed XDR. And with that, I'm going to introduce Shantae, and she's going to take it from here, and she's going to go over what we've been doing and talk about her role and her team. And I'll hand it over to you, Shantae.
Thank you, Chris. Very excited to talk to you all today about our next step to our revolution, which is managed XDR. So at Solis, we provided for many years the MDR service where we monitored the EDR platforms and looked at that. But with the XDR platform, we can see a much broader picture and what I call the whole picture. So as we look forward, let's start and look at some news, right, that impacts the threats that we see today. So in the first one in the top left, we'll see that, you see a car lot of cars. There was a very large software company, CDK, that was recently attacked that impacted sales for car dealerships. This application handled the assets, the inventory, as well as the sales for them. So there were many cars that couldn't even be driven off the lot because of that attack. And then on the right, we'll see that, there's a threat to the Federal Reserve as well. So that's something that we have to keep in mind. Bottom left, we see Lockbit ransomware. This is a very large ransomware group in which the government has indicted them for a reward to capture one of their main threat actors, and which happens to be a Russian national, right? So continuously things that we have to think about, because especially with Russian nationals, right, they could be funded by the state, so they come a lot harder. And then in the bottom right, we see about, the MGM attack, right? If you haven't heard of the MGM attack in Las Vegas, they were taken down a little while back, and they had to recover from it. And looking deeper into how that took place, this all could have happened from phishing, or what they also call vishing, right? To say, how did they get those credentials? And then in the middle, we'll look at one of the largest healthcare attacks that has ever taken place with unified healthcare. So there are a lot of things we have to look at, but in each of these scenarios, from what we've seen in our Solis SOC, is that there's always an attack before the attack. So if we look forward, I have another question to ask you, right? Why are attacks often successful? All right, so just keep that in mind. So here are some of the things that we've seen at Solis as why attacks are successful. And when I say successful, I mean the attack before the attack continued and there was success in, say, like encryption and going forth, right? Because ransomware doesn't just happen. There's stages that the threat actor has to put into. But the main reason many times why attacks are successful is because of lack of visibility. And that's because, one, maybe no one's looking, or they don't have visibility in the right places to say, where did this originate from and how can we stop the activity? But some of that also comes from organizations stuck in planning. They know they need to set up a SOC, maybe internal SOC or purchase a SOC, but they're trying to make everything perfect to say, what are our critical assets? What is it that we need to focus on? Meanwhile, they're not being watched, they're not being monitored. It's a perfect opportunity to jump in, right? Also, if your organization doesn't have the budget to staff your own 24/7 SOC, there's something else as well as our managed services solves for. As our SOC, we have a number of specialized security analysts who have a number of certifications and a lot of experience in handling these type of attacks. So another area is the inability to determine the source of the threat, right? So inexperienced security analysts many times will say, okay, all right, we stopped it, it's over, right? And they just put the Band-Aid on, and that's all it really is. But we need to figure out, why did this happen in the first place? Because if we look on the previous slide for the CDK attack for the dealership, they paused their services for a while, and then they restarted them and they were attacked again. So that is an obvious sign of the inability to determine the source of the threat, because a threat actor, aka hacker, is still living in their environment, right? And they're looking to strike again. They want to control you, and our SOC analysts want to make sure that we can see all aspects to prevent re-entry, right? And to eradicate the threat actor completely. So we'll talk about this a little bit more in the next slide. So we'll talk about, how do we stop the threat? So we'll move forward and see, how do we stop the threat? And one of the first things in that cycle, right, there's a number of incident response cycles, and they identify this a little differently, but it's identification,